91.
And then we're prohibited to start a podcast if cacao spilled.
All right. That would be a bad omen.
I don't think it's a bad omen. I think it'll just be exciting time of carpet cleaning.
Yeah. I have to stop we don't have that much card on the camera for carpet spill of that magnitude.
Do you think a podcast where the only thing that you do is carpet clean and talk would make it? Like there's a noise of a carpet clean.
Well, there's like,
and then there's you talking over it.
Well, there's like the ones where they're like, they do makeup and they talk, or they like play with the kinetic sand and they talk.
Oh yeah, I guess there's those. Yeah, there's like there's a true crime podcast where she does makeup and talks and reads the true crime.
Right.
Thing.
How do you read it, but then like still look at yourself in the mirror to do that?
I mean, I think you're really good at makeup. Mm-hmm.
Skills.
Yeah, I guess I don't know how she looks, but I'm assuming the makeup is pretty good. Yeah. Topics. When we're not off topics, there's topics.
I like how we just start immediately off topic.
Yeah.
It kind of sets the tone.
Sets the tone.
Sets the expectations, right?
No. Okay. Abandon now. They're going to be off topic the entire time. Okay. So the topic. And I'm reading this and I'm finding this chart in my Hathor book, but you said you saw these charts elsewhere.
I've seen things like this in many places that I've read where it isn't always 4, but they divide up areas of your life that need important areas of your life, such as your physical health, your spiritual health, your relationships with other people, your relationship with other people, as in like it could be as other people in general. It could be family, it could be friends, could be your community. It could be religion, could be one. There are these different pillars of your life that need, you could look at it as they need time and attention. They need stability. They need, in as much as, a garden needs attention to grow, they need some sort of attention to flourish.
Yeah. Yeah. And so in my book, the way they introduce it is each one of them, and there are 4 that they introduce the book, is basically its own interpretation of an energetic flow. Like if you took your prana, if you took your chi or your ka or your energy, and then you started interpreting it, the book says that each one is its own interpretation, and basically it goes into like the conical nature of rising, like almost like your chi or your prana rising in each one. And then as they rise together, they build the cumulative effect of your entire being. So I struggle with this. And so there's two ways to look at this. I struggle with this, and then because I struggle with this, I reject it, and then therefore I don't believe in it, which is a tendency I tend to have.
Yeah. Oh, I already don't fit this mold. This must be bullshit.
Yeah, which I know I do that all the time.
Yeah, me too.
If I don't like it and I struggle with it, then I go, oh, this is shit. And then I will just discount. Or there's like, I struggle with it. I recognize that I struggle with it. But then there's a true evaluation from the standpoint, I'm not going to discount it, but how do I actually feel about it? How do I feel about this concept? But preface is, I struggle with it. So whatever I will be saying, dear, listener, just realize it's coming out of that. And so just the struggle is basically trying to figure out how I feel about those concepts with respect to the fact that I struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. What were the specific pillars that?
Oh yeah. So the one in Hathor book that they introduce is basically self, like how I feel about self, relationship with self, like self-love, self-care, physical care, physical vitality and things like that, right? So just kind of like into everything about self, right? The second one is relationships, either family relationships or friend relationships or relationship having, and then the way they specify it is having a truthful relationships, right? So this is, I think that's what I want to discuss is there's relationship and then there's truthful relationships. And obviously the relationship portions of things is what I struggle with. And then the third one is your work or your passion and how it relates to your greater self. So everything is looked at as like, okay, does it have my pranic flow? Does it have my pranic expansion, right? And if any one of these basically has a shut off version of your prana, like, oh, I don't feel good about that or her relationships, right? If that's ever the case, right? Then imagine what they're saying is the whole pranic channel of yourself, just kind of like a portion of self of you shuts down and you don't have that portion of you flowing.
Yeah.
And the goal is to have all four of these flowing. And so the third one is work/career, or at least how you engage yourself into your life.
Mhm.
Like, so it doesn't actually have to be work related, but like, your hobbies, or like, with me, whenever I feel good, right? Like I do music, right? Like it's something that I thought, okay, that's kind of my pranic expression is doing sound, right? Interestingly, as I'm reading Tom Canyon book, who does sound, right?
Yeah.
And the third one is a relationship with the elements, which is the earth in the Native American traditions and some of the tribes, the earth in the north, the air in the east, and the south fire, and the west is water, right? And so like that within itself, like this balanced relationship with earth or with elements, right? But earth is elements, right? With like the nature of things. So from some other teachings, you might say religion or spirituality, or I don't know, whatever you want to call it, right? But in this case, because this is authors channeling this material out, they identify themselves with elements, right? Their interpretation of spirituality or religion is elements that make up our being, or that we flow with. Okay, so that's that. So those are the four pillars, and then they say that basically the cumulative effect of these pranic flows rise you into awareness and awakening. And they say that you can actually rise into awareness and awakening just by having one and cultivating one. So you don't have to have the three, but the most balanced effort of self, or a most expanded version of self, comes out of all four.
I mean, that's similar to what I read. I want to say there were 7 of them. I think money or finances was one of them. It was not a. It was a more 3D.
It was not a
thing
spiritual
ever.
awareness.
No, I don't remember what it was. But I remember that friendships was on there, and like community was on there, and I'm like,
Right.
because
well, you and I
at a
had a lot
cer-
of conversation where we would discount that.
yeah, right. And it's really easy for me to, because neither of us have many/any
Yeah.
real friends, or and so we've just like pretended it for the last, I don't know, however decade or two, that that doesn't matter, and to varying degrees of success.
Mm-hmm. I mean, sooner or later, I think if you ask anyone in the long term, they say, "Do you want to have good relationship, good friends, good family
Right.
around you?"
Yeah.
And I think everybody would say yes.
Yeah, I would say yes.
Yeah, and I would say yes too. But I think and the book says, like, there's this big warning is that, like, as you recognize that there's things that start to drain you, like you go into spiritual awareness and you recognize that there's just this generalized drain on things.
Yeah.
You tend to shut off that drain, right? As opposed to addressing it any other way.
Yeah, and with some things that's easier and makes more sense. If you work at the factory farm where they slaughter animals by the millions or something, and you're an empathetic vegetarian person, that might not be the right job for you.
I'm like, you could be vegetarian working a slaughter.
And
unless your goal is to infiltrate and sabotage the
sure,
slaughter.
right? Saboteur. So removing yourself from that situation is probably the right thing to do.
Yeah, but that's the obvious one.
Right. And so there are cases when that is definitely the right thing to do. And there's probably cases when that's definitely the wrong thing to do as well. It's just with like friends and family, I don't know if it's different or not. It's like, these relationships don't serve you. So, or don't serve you to where you they don't even begin.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, the way you word it is, you don't want surface level, trivial friendships.
Yeah.
And
Superficial.
Superficial.
Yeah.
And I would agree, because it's, what do you what's the point to be, but on the other hand, there is there is some sort of comfort in, people and being around people too. Like, even just going down to the grocery store, there is something about that is nice. And it's like,
and we talked about that.
I don't talk to a single soul other than saying hello to whoever happens to be checking out at the register, but just, I am with other people, and that somehow feels normal or something. Comforting.
See, that's the thing.
Comforting.
So the statement that I made, but again, if somebody is listening, please preface this with the idea that I'm struggling with it. So who knows how much of projection of bullshit that I'm putting on this.
Right.
But there's something to this, and I still haven't figured out. But of course, myself struggling with it, and then projecting something that is my false struggle. Obviously, I always want to make sure that nobody falls victim to that. There's this idea of someone, and because the idea of someone and not being alone offers comfort, we as a society have come to think of that as like, oh no, that's just completely normal to want someone,
right.
to want to be with someone. But I said this a while, but and I'm repeating it because I think there's some kind of truth to this. Excuse me. I think there's a pain body associated with idea of someone. Right? Did I say this on the podcast? I know I said this to you.
Podcast or not.
Okay. There's this generalized idea of surviving, right? Surviving, like I'm not alone because there's someone. Now, you would go, of course you will go crazy in bunkers if there's no one, right? Whatever that Tom Hanks movie is where he invents Wilson and he has conversation with Wilson, right?
Castaway.
Wait, is it Wilson? Like same Wilson that is in Tool Time Wilson?
Well, it's Wilson because the ball is the Wilson brand.
Oh, okay. But there was also Wilson who was...
There's Wilson the neighbor.
The neighbor, yeah. And we have Wilson the neighbor. His name's not Wilson. We call him Wilson. Yeah, right. So the idea of someone, right?
Right.
And what does it mean for you to feel like there's someone? And I think that trauma comes from infancy.
Yeah.
Either pre-birth or post-birth. And having the initial concept of idea of survival with us is built into someone.
Yeah. I mean, like, if you go back, to the tribal days, if you were, expelled from the tribe, you're going to die because you can't survive on your own.
Yeah, that's tribal. But what I'm saying is if you're an infant laying in, not even the forest, the crib, right? So technically there's no animals that are going to come to eat you.
Yeah.
But in the crib, and then your mother dies,
and you're alone,
or your father dies, and you're alone, you're going to die. So the idea of someone, even if you don't realize that you can perceive an idea of a mother or father or a nurse or a caretaker, someone is required to be there in order for you to survive.
Right.
Up until you're walking and able to comprehend food, which is, let's be honest, like at least 2.
Right.
If not 3.
But even then, even after you're not, I don't know if it's 2, but even after you're not dependent on people to take care of your basic needs.
Your food.
Right.
And your preparation of food.
Right. But even, let's say you're a teenager to adult and you're able to do these things, it doesn't go away. It's that's
what I'm saying. The trauma sets in with you laying in the crib as an infant.
Yeah.
With the idea that someone needs to be there.
In prison, they solitary confinement is the punishment. It's like, we're going to take away the someone. Boom. That is the punishment.
Yeah.
And people like go crazy in there.
Well, yeah, because it's that at the root, this is what I want to say, at the root understanding of ourselves as human beings, right? Because we have a long gestation period and then we have a long out of body gestation period.
Yeah.
We need someone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of someone is kind of built in through the trauma, like a root cause of our trauma.
Yeah.
Or root unknown, unprocessed trauma that we have is just the idea of someone and what happens to us when the someone is taken away. Like when Tom Hanks is on the island and there's no one, you invent someone.
Yeah.
You have someone's in your head.
Yeah.
Right? Because otherwise it is crucial for survival.
Yeah. On one hand, it's like it should be a new bottom level rung on Maslow's pyramid because it's that fundamental.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, it's like clearly you can, at least as an adult, for some period of time, live alone. It is possible to survive alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a castaway style, or in a solitary confinement style, or in a you alone lost at sea or whatever. It's but I guess at what cost?
No, but this is what I want to say. I want to, and this is like a big statement to make. But again, everyone preface this when maybe Tanya is totally fucked up and completely blind to her pain, body, and trauma. And so she's saying this in order to throw this whole thing out of the window because it's uncomfortable to actually face it.
Mm.
But I'll just keep on saying that. So maybe I'll register for myself. But if, let's say, I preface this all the time, Jesus style frequency. If you're Jesus style, right? And you have the pranic flow and you're open, period. You're just open, right? And you're Buddha and you're open. Are we still talking about these pillars of importance in order to open self to pranic flow? Or are they simply things you need to explore in your life in order to fix the trauma so then you're open to the overall idea of yourself? And that's what I think they are. They're not pillars that you need to have stabilized as your base. These are simply access points into the window of self to where you can start to draw a retrospect on how you feel.
Right. They're more prompts.
They're prompts in the sense of like, oh, well, guess what? My inner self feels uncomfortable and it feels grief about the fact that I don't have healthy relationships with my family. And then I get to explore that.
Yeah.
The outcome of what the relationship with the family does or does not do is irrelevant. It is you opening up the pranic channel of truth, how you feel about the circumstances.
Yeah, right.
Right?
I mean,
the truth of self, of how you feel.
Side note that would apply to, I mean, that example, but any of these examples where whatever the 3D real world thing is irrelevant. It's all what it's triggering in you.
It's a projection out on
in as much as you can work on what is triggering you, it will actually help that thing in the real world too.
Yes, right.
Doing some work on why does my relationship with my parents bother me? Why does my relationship with Bill at the office bother me? Or whatever. Will actually has nothing to do with Bill, but will actually most likely improve your relationship with Bill. But that is irrelevant. That is beside the point. It's not. You're not doing it for that reason.
Yeah.
You're doing it for yourself.
Yeah. The elementary thought when you hear about these pillars of like, okay, self. So then I'm going to go out and I'm going to work on self. I'm going to meditate and I'm going to whatever, right? Like you have that whatever to fix this pillar. And then you're like, oh, relationships. Oh, you know what? I'm going to go out and I'm going to build relationships and fix relationship. And that's going to be a thing that I do. That is the elementary approach to this. And that is not what these pillars at all mean. Like when you hear that, it is not like, oh, I'm going to go and start fixing it. Oh, you know what? I'm going to go and start searching for friends. I'm going to go and I'm going to start, finding a career that fulfills my heart and soul. None of that. This is points of retrospect, of cue, in order to have you sit back and go, What is that I feel, right? And within this retrospect, you will go into your emotional bodies about these things to go, how do I feel about myself? How do I feel about the loss and the grief that I feel about not having a relationship with my family, right?
Mm.
How do I feel about my job not being fulfilling? And what does it mean for me to be fulfilled in my career? How do I feel about me not being connected to the spirit or earth or all that is, right? And so these are just kind of like these brushstrokes, earthly based, human based, 3-dimensional interpretation of what it means for us to be humans as we explore experience a world that is earth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So they're large brushstrokes like this. And, if I start to look into the like emotions of grief that I feel about lost relationships, or the emotion of longing I have for quality relationship, truthful relationship, relationships that are not superficial, right? I can find truth in just that and be able to open myself up and go, I'm aware, and this is my awareness of that truth, that I have grief and I can feel grief and I can open myself up to the grief that I don't have good relationships.
Yeah.
And allowing that emotional processing to take place as opposed to gun-hoing and doing something to fix it.
Right. Right. I mean, that's whatever I read first was not that. It was, spend more time with your friends, do this. It was almost like you have 24 hours in a day. How big is your friend pie chart? How big is your self pie chart? And your self pie chart's pretty big because you've got 8 hours of sleep in there. And how big is your whatever?
Yeah. And sleeping is not self.
Right.
That's just like
so
one-on-one survival.
Yeah, so sleep is its own thing, and you've got 16 hours left now, or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, no, and in this book, right, this is a spiritual book, and the Tom Kenyon channeled Hawthorne, and it's incorporating this human aspect. But of course, I look at everything from the standpoint of what is self without trauma, right? This is where I'm coming from. What is self without trauma? And what does self need? And the self does not need these 4 pillars, right? The self without trauma is an open, expanded version of reality.
Right.
When you step out of that and you go, okay, what does set me into the frequency of human, right? This is the experience of human. So, right? So
right.
You have to realize you have to go in here, but what is experience of human other than the awareness of self through the lens of your trauma? To begin with, when you're still working on trauma, right? Before you graduate into the Jesus era. And so that is relationship, truth in the essence of relationship with I, relationship with others, relationship with earth, relationship with movement in this plane.
Yeah.
But that, right, that is step into humanity. But to explore that is not to dive in and go gung-ho by fixing it, right? And going, nah. It's to open yourself from the pranic standpoint of what is my truth from if I'm Jesus, if I'm Buddha, right? Like, I'm not saying I'm Jesus or I'm Buddha, but step into the Christ frequency,
right.
Step into the frequency of Buddha, right? And if you are in that open space of love and oneness, and then you step into a pillar of relationships, what does exploring that look like?
Right. I mean, that's if you, almost using them as a role model in a sense, and not even necessarily like what they did in their life per se.
No, the frequency of them.
But yeah, their essence.
Yeah, the essence, right? When Jesus talked about love and love for others, what is that?
I mean, it is kind of a what would Jesus do type of a thing. It's like, if Jesus were sitting here right now and he had, boom, he's inherited this body in this life, and there's, such and such problems over here and such and such issues over there, whatever. Would he even find them as problems?
Well, no, there's no,
I don't think so.
Nothing is right. Like if you go into the frequency, if you go up into the, the Christ consciousness frequency, everything is just beauty.
Right.
The struggle of self is beauty.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The fact that I struggle and I am grieving possibility of a relationship that I myself designed as loss. Do you see what I mean? It's beauty, right? Because that designation lies on me, right?
Yeah.
And so just accepting self as someone who sees grief in the relationship is beauty within itself. Do you know what I mean? This is going back to our last podcast, just accepting the beauty of the human experience where you want to cry over grief of something.
Right.
Did you want to bring in the experience scenario that we were struggling with this morning? Because that would be a good transition into that.
So yesterday was our son's high school graduation. So he's officially an adult, I guess. I don't know how that works. And it was really difficult for me. Like, obviously, he's going to graduate from high school. So it's not like a surprise that this is coming. It's been 18 years in the making. It just, it hit me how it did take me by surprise somehow. How quick, I guess.
But that's grief, right? Do you recognize that frequency as grief or not?
Yeah, I mean, it's like grief over like this, like idealized younger him that's not there anymore.
Yeah, but right, my dot extension is, it has to be deeper than that, right? Him younger him.
Yeah, and it's like there's this like, I mean, even though I know that isn't actually happening, there's this feeling of like losing him, right? Which I guess the general idea of like losing anyone or anything, I guess. And the how did you word it earlier? Because that worked out well.
Well, I think whenever somebody becomes an empty nester, right? We had a day, like the school kind of finished early, and then it was like almost like a week between him finishing school and graduation. Then we had a day where we just did things together, the four of us together, right? Yeah. And so by comparison, that day I was thinking, oh my gosh, it was just like so perfect, because usually he's gone. We don't see him, right? He's 18. He has his driver's license. He has his friends. And so like most of the time we don't see him, even though he still lives in his house. And then Annabelle is kind of there, kind of not there. But, so it's mostly the three of us for the most part. And that was the day where four of us did things together. I think like we went to the pool together. We played card games together. We had dinner together. Possibly had, well, no, he wakes up at 1 p.m. or 1 a.m. Yeah, 1 p.m. So we definitely didn't have breakfast together. We
might have done some pickleball. I don't remember.
Oh, yeah. We watched the movie. So it was kind of like the normal four of us doing normal family stuff.
Yeah.
And we haven't had that in a while. And, your thought process is we're not going to have that many more of those, right?
Yeah.
And so, and I thought, oh my gosh, it was just so perfect, because it was the family dynamic, and we just watched that show with John Hamm too. And the whole show explores taking family for granted and taking what actually matters, which is family and time with your kids, right? And wait, there was another show that we were watching, and they were talking about how important it is to appreciate your kids when they're young. The Kevin Bacon show, right? So there's no way that didn't register, right? It's just like, right, you are in a new chapter of your life, and 18 years of your life with at least Aiden are now gone, right? Like, and so it will never be back, right? And so the idea of just having one, I think to some extent, realizing that you're grieving the separation of the dynamic where the full family is there together.
Yeah.
And so it's falling apart of family. You interpret that as a falling apart of family.
Right. I mean, yes, it absolutely feels like that. And, it's, I intellectually know a lot of things. I know, it's A, he's not moving out. B, this is exactly, where I was at his age, and I was excited to go on to do new things. So all these things are true. But yeah, It does feel like that.
No, but I want to point out, like, the grief is your grief.
Yeah.
And him doing his thing is completely separate.
And I know that too.
Right. So you have to separate those things. He is at the nervous and excited point of his life, and you are in I'm experiencing grief point of your life. Right. And so the important thing here is to go into the emotional interpretation of this from he's interpreting his truth from his pain body, and you're interpreting your truth from your pain body, which is loss of family.
Yeah.
And in this case, the projection out is you feel loss of family.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. Period.
And then you're projecting it onto this situation.
Yes, true.
And then the situation is somehow similar to it, right? As opposed to, I look at it, right, because I don't have a pain body of loss of family. It doesn't, at least it hasn't hit me yet. As far as, how it hits me. So I interpret this as this is the next stage of my interpretation of life. Do you know what I mean? Like, I see it as like, oh yeah, like there was 18 years of me doing this, and now there's going to be 18 years of me doing something different.
Yeah.
And I'm not actually even projecting anything into the future and like saying 18 years. 18 years doesn't actually apply because, like he's going to have his trajectory and Annabelle's going to have her trajectory, and our trajectory is just slightly different now. Right. But the reason why it's not hitting me is my pain body is not loss of family. I'm not grieving the loss of family because it is not something that hits me from childhood trauma standpoint. So thing to explore here is not to try to fixate and not to try to lock him down and make sure he stays home.
I mean, yes, obviously.
I'm just verbalizing maybe the like surface level things that people tend to do, like, cling on to your child more, try to lock him down more, or try to make sure that he's home more. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That is what a lot of people who struggle with this do.
Yeah.
But him having his own freedom and his own life is the right thing to do. In fact, separating, you can be there to help if he needs it. To me, this is soothing because I have a pain body of me having to do this all by myself as a kid.
Right.
Because I was the only English speaker. And guess what? If I don't get this shit figured out, like what Tadaki was saying, I'm like, holy shit. Like it just brought all that up. Like going to college, there's no one to help me.
He came in he immigrated here as a freshman. Is that?
Yes. And I was crying when he was talking about that. I'm like, oh my God.
And he was like, did you like his speech? I'm like, yes, a lot more than the first one.
Well, yeah. I feel bad not liking her speech. I just has a speech impediment.
Yeah, I mean, this is soothing in that there's like, he still needs me type of way.
You poor thing.
It's so messed up.
Poor thing. But there you go. You see, that's the truth. It is about being needed. It is about being wanted. It's not even grief of anything. Maybe it's just that. And you've been diving into the whole thing of making sure he's set up for college and all this and all that. And I think you've been using that as a distraction of he still needs me because I'm setting him up for college.
I mean, yeah. No, I mean that's.
I mean, unproportionately.
That's not lost to me, right? I was saying something.
Well, no, you should explore this. Where does this hit, right? Because it's, again...
No, I mean, that's where it hits, is that...
I'm still wanted? If he leaves, you're not wanted? Somebody leaving you, is that it? Is somebody leaving you makes it for sure that you're not wanted?
Needed feels like a better word than wanted somehow. And so, I don't know if that's just a more emphatic version.
Yeah, needed. I mean, but that's what, right? Not being needed. So if you have a trauma of being needed...
Yeah.
Not being needed is excruciating and painful.
Yeah.
Like you were crying about the lunch making too, remember? That's being needed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And taking care of the tires in the car and filling up with gas and all of those things. I mean,
triviality is that.
I will start to cry just because it's sad that this is things we used to do that we don't do. But
I mean,
but with you,
there's some of that too.
yeah. But with you, it's
deeper.
being needed.
It's a lot deeper. Yeah. The ugh. Oh my gosh.
No, it's great that you're crying because you're letting that trauma out.
Yeah. Yeah. My family, like throughout growing up,
Wait, are you switching from being needed to something else?
I
Or you don't want to cry?
I don't know what else to say about being needed. This might connect.
Okay.
There were a lot of people and family members that just kind of got sliced off over time.
But I think that's like I don't think most people realize that that's just like life. I had the same thing with us.
Yeah, but like,
but how traumatic it was for you?
Well, it was weird and traumatic, and they seemed like not good reasons to do it. And there are good reasons to do it, and there are bad reasons to do it. But it was like, oh, you have an uncle, and he got divorced, and it's like, okay, well, now we're gonna he's out of the circle, and we just never talk to him. And after that, and I know he lives halfway across the country and everything, but I after that, which I don't know, I was 10, maybe younger. I think I've seen him 3 times since then, ever. Not that we saw him a lot before, but we just didn't talk.
Him being disowned is its own thing.
Yeah, he was just like, and I'm not saying disowned from the greater family, but I'm saying my parental unit.
Yeah.
He was disowned from that. And then later there was my grandfather died, and like his sister went to the funeral house before my grandmother, which would have been his wife. And apparently this is some sort of unforgivable sin, and so now she's out as well. And I'm like,
discarded.
Yeah,
not needed.
Yeah, and it felt weird because I like that we called her an aunt. I like that. I liked her.
This is George, right? This is Uncle George?
It was Joellen, but yeah.
Okay. But this is that same couple that you used to spend a lot of time with.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was like they came to the wedding, right? But that's the only time I saw them after that happened. He died in I was working at LG&E, so early college, maybe.
Your grandfather?
Yeah. I was maybe 18 or 19, and I think that was the only time I saw him after that. And it's like, so we sliced off a whole bunch of people, and I think they were friends too for whatever reason. And I'm not saying that there are not reasons to slice people out of your life. There are. Believe me. But somehow I had this tied back into it in my mind.
Well, as a child, right? If you're interpreting a situation, right? And to you, it seems superficial and artificial, right? Like, wait, somebody went to the funeral, and all of a sudden, here's this whole relationship that we had that, as a child, you perceive them as your friends, as family members, someone you could count on. It's somebody, right? And somebody you trust and somebody you loved. Maybe not like mom and dad loved, but loved, right? I mean, heck, maybe even more than mom and dad loved, because chances are they were nicer.
They were probably, after my parents, they were like the number 2.
Yeah. So it's almost like your second set of parents that you trusted and, relied on them being there, just got sliced off for, I guess, when you were interpreting it, right? For nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's grief. I think that's still grief. 1, of grief, but then 2, because your pain body is, look what my family does to someone who they allegedly love, and in fact is their family.
Yeah. Through some sort of perceived slight, or and it's like, or the divorce is like, how does that?
I think that's a religious thing, right?
Yeah, it's a religious thing, but it's like, oh my gosh, nothing could matter to my parents less than what someone else does with their life.
Well, no,
So-
it matters.
But it matters. So yeah, I don't know. I never understood it, right? And of course, I never talked about it because
There's that.
we don't talk about it.
Yeah, there's
So
that.
we don't talk about Bruno.
There's just feeling something, and then one, not allowing yourself to feel how you actually felt, but still the trapped trauma of what that means.
Right.
On multiple levels. One, of seeing how easily somebody can get discarded, right? Like the show we just watched is basically that, right? So which is perfect, right? Like as far as the alignment of being able to process that.
Yeah.
And then, right, because the second you decide they're out, right? And then two, if being in that relationship offers you comfort of being wanted and being needed and
Right.
feeling secure and feeling safe, and having that ripped out of you for basically no reason whatsoever, as far as your interpretation goes, it's unsafe. So you're not needed. And look how easy it is to all of a sudden become not needed.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah. And above and beyond that, yes. I was going to say, and, and because, my parents decided this, I got to inherit this decision without any say at all.
Which is the hopelessness of you're unsafe due to somebody else's
Yeah. Which,
whim of the way.
yeah. Which,
Which
without any say at all was the story of my childhood too. So
yeah, so that's already your childhood trauma, right? And then you go into life where you have trusted people around you, right? And then the trust of being wanted, being needed, and how they care about you and how they treat you comes into comfort of being wanted and being needed and being comforted by loved ones. And then if all of a sudden, at the whim of someone else, they make you feel unsafe, not only are they ripping those people off, which feels unsafe, they're making this decision for you, which feels unsafe.
yeah.
I mean, it's also ultimate trauma of unsafety.
Yeah.
But, of course, you don't go ... unsafe. You go ... not needed and easily discarded.
Yeah.
But, I mean, feel that and allow that. That is the truth. Like, right? Like, you have to actualize that as a human experience and go, yeah, that is my truth.
Yeah. No, I feel that's exactly how I can see how that feels unsafe, but that's just not the level that really resonates.
Not yet.
Hmm?
Not yet.
I mean, it is unsafe. That is a good word to describe it, but right.
The part where we need someone, we don't understand that someone is safety. But that's
right.
This is what I want to say. This is probably the
hidden.
deepest.
It's a hidden safety.
This is probably the deepest trick of the nervous system trauma, is that we don't even want to identify that idea of someone equals survival, and survival is safety. So right, so safety is survival, right? Survival. Yeah. That is so buried within our psyche that we don't even understand how traumatized we are about the idea of someone not being there. I don't, obviously separate, you go into Jesus, Christ consciousness, it's not there. But to step into the human, I think that is the baseline of human. I don't know if any philosophers or psychologists ever talked about this, but I think that's it. The someone is the baseline of all human trauma. And we don't see it, we don't discuss it, we don't talk about it. And all the nuance actually spews out of it.
Right.
Like everything spews out of that.
I mean, because the ultimate safety is somebody else. If you want to believe in Maslow's pyramid, all of those things can be provided to some degree by someone else. They having some sort of connection.
I think Maslow's pyramid probably does negate even this point. On purpose.
Having someone else can maybe be viewed as a way to achieve the rest of those things.
Yeah, but most people as an adults realize, okay, well, I can harvest my own food, and I can
right. Intellectually, yes, you can probably survive alone.
But Maslow's pyramids, think about where Maslow's pyramids start. Where does it start? Safety, which is what? Food,
shelter, water.
Yeah, food, shelter, water. But it doesn't start with when you were 0. When you're age 0 and you're laying in the crib, it's not the food and shelter.
You can't even feed yourself.
You don't understand food and shelter and water. Or milk, right? You understand someone.
Because someone
the Maslow's,
equals life.
Yeah. Maslow's pyramids does not start where it needs to start. It negates this whole other thing that basically
below level 1 is level 0. Someone.
Right. And all human trauma starts right there.
Right. Yeah, because it's like
dependence, unprocessed realization that you are completely helpless, period. And then someone is the solution.
Right. No, I mean, it's so weird because someone clearly is safety. It's there's a straight line. It just, the way it just doesn't hit that.
I would guarantee somehow that our brain does not let us go that deep into the idea that this is where it all starts. Like when I hit that point, my system becomes so overwhelmed about all the nuances that carries. It almost seems like my system shuts itself off from exploring the depth of this much processing.
It's this giant hidden.
But I think it's because it's hidden from our psyche. Like either intentionally or not, I'm not going to go into conspiracy theories, but the reason why Maslow's pyramid does not start where it needs to start is because our psyche completely hid that from ourselves.
I mean, it's super. I mean, A, it's intellectually obvious, but B, you can feel, I don't have food. That's unsafe. I don't have shelter. That's unsafe. Those are blindingly obvious to everyone at any age.
It's the someone. It's the someone.
But not having someone, this nebulous someone, anyone, entity.
Hence why most people get lost in the idea of God.
Because that's someone.
Because it's someone, right?
So
this is, oh my gosh, is this evil? This is maybe really evil. When God is being explored for propagation of pain and trauma, right? Because think about this. If you need someone, and that's trauma, right? You're never going to address it. Then the idea of God relieves that trauma to hide it.
Not just that, but these days, most idea of God is this godly father figure.
Yeah,
it's this
someone
patriarchal, probably male, probably old and wise with a big long white beard, giving life to Adam in the Sistine Chapel style God.
Yeah.
Who, and who else to care for you and protect you and save you and than a all-powerful father figure. Right?
Yep. In order
or even an all-powerful mother figure is
the
same thing, maybe just slightly less bad, but
but I think this is a big statement here. The essence of all human entrapment into the unknowing and not going to the fruition of self, that is the full potential of your pranic expansion, lays in the hidden layer of that.
I mean,
we surrendered our trauma or sovereignty to the idea of someone. And we think, oh no, that's just me having the spiritual pillar filled with God and the love of God.
There's a personification of God in that.
And so we mistakenly take that fourth pillar of connection to earth or God or the spirit, and we insert trauma into it by saying there's someone.
Yeah.
And then we insert trauma into my relationship with my mom and dad is the someone. My relationship with work and the community and the things that I do is someone. And instead of seeing them for what they actually are, they're just basically facilitation of trauma. We see them for what the world wants to express as, no, this is me expressing myself. Do you see what I mean? We take the concepts that actually feed us into pranic and we use them to shut off our pranic.
Do you think people who have an idea of instead of a, the Christian God or the Islamic God, male God, if it's just, I believe in, the source or the oneness or whatever, is that different?
It depends. I guess it depends on your personal interpretation of source and oneness.
Right.
Like if I go into the source, like prior to the ascension to the belief and to the earth consciousness, it's like if you start approaching the source, right? And then Christ consciousness is kind of on its way.
Yeah.
If you go into there,
it doesn't feel like to me. I just interrupted you, but it doesn't feel like it's an external entity.
No, it's you.
It's you.
It's oneness of self with a whole.
Like calling it the ether is a really apt way to call it because it permeates and unites and unifies everything. And it's like the distinction between me and you and me and the rock and me and God, but God is almost the wrong word here.
Well, yeah, it's just if you look at the corrupted word for the
because
God
has all this baggage behind it of the Christian God or the whatever God.
In the Christian teachings, God is someone who gives you salvation.
Yeah,
you're dependent on the God versus the real source. The real God is the essence of it all, and
salvation is already inherent in everything.
There's no such thing as salvation.
Okay, that's a better way to word it.
Right. There's no such thing as salvation. That's why I have such a big problem is the Maslow's pyramid of what is hiding there, what is not showing is that human dependency on the someone. And for the most part, the world has been very good at tricking us that God is there to give us something, to provide us salvation, as opposed to what God really is this essence of wholeness that is like the most expansive version of unified field that is love.
Well said.
Right? You do not need God to feel akin with everything and everyone. In fact, when you're in Christ consciousness, you don't need someone for anything. You don't need anything for anything. And somebody being there or not being is irrelevant. What you feel is a completion of wholeness. So I would say this baseline pyramid in this Chandler Hathor book is there as a gateway into exploration as opposed to a dependence on those things that we fail to see for what they are as exploration of our pain, body, and trauma, as opposed to, I'm going to go and I'm going to make sure that I have a good family. I don't know why I turned country in there, but whatever that was.
I'm not sure what that was. I think it was country.
I tried to do country accent yesterday. I'm like, wait, I cannot do a country accent.
It's cute.
Me trying.
Yeah, I like it. You should try some more. I'll use words like yonder, and you can do that, and then
yonder.
That's where God is, up yonder.
Yonder. But I think that's what it is, right? The pillars, let's say if you believe in the pillars, if you're trying to explore the pillars, because I'm like, I heard that and obviously it ticked me. I'm like, ooh, it ticked me because I don't have these.
The exact same thing. As I read that book, I was like, oh, I don't like this part because
I'm not there.
Well, sure. I'm like, oh, I don't like this part because I see that here's, this maybe community and friendships are these giant gaping holes in what I would otherwise do really, I would fit really well in this. And therefore I'm not good.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to just take this whole thing and bundle up and throw it away because this doesn't fit. This doesn't make me feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I 100% saw myself do that. And this was years, I don't know what book it was, but this was a long time ago.
No, when I was reading that, I'm like, oh yeah, it's hitting me. Look at that. I don't have...
There's a fight back.
Yeah, there's a fight back. There's a pushback to where I want to reject this. But that's amazing because then the truth is I get to see, oh look, I feel grief and uncomfortable and loneliness about the fact that I'm not good at making friends and I'm not good at keeping healthy relationships with my family, right? Like, and I want to justify that I have the right to do that or not to do that, right? So there's this internal fight that I have about me perceiving self as someone who is unable to have healthy relationships, or me perceiving someone who is easy to discard people and reject people, right? Like you see that within me, which there's no way that doesn't hit you. That my safety mechanism of not being hurt, right, of unsafety is to discard, Do you know what I mean? And you
Yeah.
obviously, prime for discarding all the time. Because
Right. Well, none of that, but I grew up with it.
no, but you got me because you grew up with it. The only point of you having me is because you saw that I am so easy to discard people. I have no problem discarding people.
Yeah.
In fact, it makes me feel good because it quite literally takes me into safety. My safety mechanism is to discard something that is causing me to feel unsafe. And it makes me feel safe because I feel protected and cocooned, right? And anytime you have a fight, what do? I threaten divorce and I threaten you being out of my life.
Yeah.
Because guess what? That is my ultimate safety. You are point of, I can't control this shit, right? Like that's literally how I perceive you. So therefore, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to discard you.
Yeah.
And with you, that's literally the trigger of your lifetime with your mother. Look at how easy she is with discarding things. Or, I mean, hence, that's why you married me.
We're perfect.
No, we're not perfect. I'm fucked up and you're fucked up.
We're perfect for each other.
Yeah. No, that's basically
What could possibly go wrong?
The karmic cycle to work that out, right?
Right.
Yeah, right. But the recognition is how you see into your life, right? Like I literally run away from things that make me feel unsafe. And then that's the reason why I don't have relationships is because the second that relationship comes into my life and it makes me feel unsafe, I discard it. And in your case, the second relationship comes into your life and you feel threatened in the sense that you're not needed, you flip the fuck out, right? But acknowledging that with your truth and actually just being with that, right, is like really difficult. Like the overwhelm that we're right now, maybe I will go into the overarching point of this podcast is right now on Earth, we're being forced to go into these overwhelming, huge sweep notions of these uncomfortable emotional arcs.
Right.
Like they're arcs, they're huge arcs. And right now we're facing arcs all the way from zero, maybe even like pre-birth, maybe even, pre-life if you believe in that. And addressing these overwhelming arcs into right now. And what do you do with it right now? Do you once again restart the arc and continue propagation thereof? Or do you accept the amount of trauma and pain that you feel within this arc and you integrate it? And we're giving ginormous amount of opportunities to integrate all of these arcs all at the same time. Like the universe is giving us grace to where you have like days or hours of this arc versus this arc versus this arc, by seeing it as this huge arc of avoidance of integration. Like, right, the big arc is avoidance of integration of all of these subsections that we have separated because it's been so overwhelming to feel so much at the same time, but we're giving everything at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right. So that is what so that's what's happening right now. We're being poked at the most potent way, right? Because everything that is coming in is hitting, right, from the physical sense, but recognize it in the most beautiful way to where you can lean in and accept, as opposed to going back into what we have done all the times in the past, which is shut off, numb off, not feel,
Conceal,
pretend like it's not there, and not integrate it into our truth. Like the most beautiful thing you can do right now is accept all of this pain as your truth. And think about this, like, right, you're crying over Uncle George as a loss of something that was beautiful and important to you. 30 years later, 20 years later, I don't know what this is, right?
Yeah.
But it's like a tiny little nuance that you would have never thought that is being brought into you from the past that you never got to process or integrate. But the reason why it was there was because it was hitting the innate childhood trauma that you felt from zero.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like I want you to feel these hoops, these loops.
No,
like you need to feel the arcs.
Yeah. I mean, most of what I've just said in the last hour is a very new realization.
But I think it's important. Maybe it's not important, but I want you to see the propagation of the arcs. Because then if you see the propagation of these arcs, you can apply them to all the other little nuances that will be coming in this year, right? Like in 25. Like when you say it's the year to feel uncomfortable. It's a year to integrate.
Yeah.
But you integrate through arcs, right? The grace that we have is the understanding that that is how it's done. And to me, maybe this is a control, I don't know, but understanding this process of like, yeah, it is extremely overwhelming. Like yesterday was the first time I felt claustrophobic, right?
Yeah, that was, I mean, nobody likes standing in line, but I'm just, I was just impatient to get out and see people. So, but yeah, you were on edge.
I wasn't on edge.
You wanted to get through that much more than I did. I mean,
yeah, when you say on edge, it's slightly trigger. I'm not on edge. I'm quite aware of what's happening. But if you're aware of what's happening, you still need to soothe the nervous system in order to be able to stay in that space to actualize on how you feel, right? Right. So what is the I will paint the scenario. So this is graduation for like 223 students, right? So imagine 223 students plus the family members around them, plus the faculty that supported these students, plus all the friends that came to see these students, plus all the hoopla of all the important state representatives and the teachers and all of that. So like thousands of people.
There are a couple thousand people in that. Yeah, in there, yeah.
And then you have two tiny little doors. There's a whole bunch of doors, but you have two tiny little doors that are actually letting these people out. And so thousands of people have to funnel out. I'm exaggerating this process in order to allow people to feel. You're not exaggerating.
There were two doors.
No, I know, but the reason why I'm exaggerating is
why
painting this large picture is because that's how I felt, right? And so everybody has to funnel out. And so the emotional overwhelm that I feel, one, is that I feel the overwhelm of this thing being so important. And I have this thing for control in order to soothe my system, right? So I'm already emotionally overwhelmed by the fact that he's graduating and there's this new chapter in his life. And I'm nervous about it and I'm excited about it. And I know he's nervous about it. And I know, right, again, trauma, how I felt. And like one of the commencement speeches was literally about how overwhelming it feels to be foreign in 9th grade. And I'm like, shit, that's me. And so there are all these emotional overflows that I'm feeling all at the same time. And I can't even pinpoint them because there's, let's say, dozens of them. It feels like thousands, but honestly, it's probably like a handful of them. But it feels overwhelming. It feels like there's 1,000 different emotions coming at you at the same time. And as I'm sitting there, I feel the complete overwhelm. But I'm acknowledging that I feel this complete overwhelm, right? And my way of coping with overwhelm is perceiving the idea of control. And so then we have to funnel out of these doors. This is a silly little story, but just give you an idea of what soothing looks like to me. And we're not moving. Like quite literally, no one is moving.
Yeah.
In fact, there's all these gaps. Nobody's filling in these gaps. And so I feel complete loss of control because I'm stuck in the crowd of people that feel like a weight of the world on me, right? So by this emotional trauma of me that feels like the weight of the world. Claustrophobia is a weight of the world on you, right? And you're not moving, right? You're stuck and you're not moving and you can't get out. And so for the first time, I feel claustrophobic and I'm not moving. Not only are you claustrophobic, you're not moving. But I bet if I Google claustrophobia is a fear of tight spaces. But I bet like on the rudimentary level of it is also not moving forward in the tight spaces.
Right. On a Louise Hay style. Deeper meaning behind it.
Yeah. But I think if you are in a tight space, but you're making your progress of out, you can somehow soothe your system out of claustrophobia.
You're afraid you will be stuck.
Yeah, and yeah. So yeah,
sure. I mean,
I'm literally.
I guess I could feel so. To me, it was the idiocy of the whole thing. I'm like, you have 8,000 doors here, and maybe some of them don't go to the right.
Wait, they all said emergency exit for some reason. They were not opened.
Felt like an emergency.
But acknowledge that. Like you dealt with it going, oh, look, Tanya's not handling this well, but guess what? She's making a really good headway through the system. Let me follow her.
Yeah.
But the overwhelm was still there for you.
No, yes. To me, it was I was noticed that I was really bothered by the idiocy of thousands of people being funneled through 2 doors. And when I say funneled, I mean like a whole bunch of different lines of people all converging on 2 doors.
But not moving.
And not moving because once they got through the door, they would stop and then like,
Stay there
and just
socialize.
some pictures, and it's like, you have the whole convention center. You have like dozens of acres of floor space to sprawl out onto, and everyone stopped at the other side of the door.
Yeah, but I think
And so
idiocy is ...
That's me. That's my thing.
Yeah, idiocy is ...
It's unsafe.
It's unsafe, and I can't control the situation.
It's unsafe, right?
And it's thousands of idiots. So guess what? I can't control thousands of idiots.
Yeah.
Right. So, but realize the emotional overwhelm of that. Right.
I mean, it was. Yes, it was bothersome.
Well, no, with me, it was basically like onslaught of emotions.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming. And then I'm stuck. And the entire point of integration is the second you get slammed with overwhelm of emotions, you try not to feel them and block off and go drinking or go whatever by not feeling them. So my goal was, I'm going to stay in the onslaught of emotional thing, but at the same time, I know when I was a child and I had the onslaught of emotional things, I would short circuit. So in order not to short circuit, it is okay to give yourself some grace. Like, I feel like it's grace. I'm giving myself grace, realizing that I want to stay in it. I'm aware that I'm overwhelmed and I want to stay in it. But at the same time, to stay in it, I have to have some soothing.
So you don't need 100, but please let's not have 0. So give me something in the middle.
Yeah, and so that was my goal yesterday. Is I'm gonna go into something that is completely uncomfortable. I'm gonna be completely overwhelmed. My parents are there. They're number one trigger for me. The current state of being and the physical deterioration of health is a huge trigger for me. So there are all these triggers, and I realize I'm gonna actively go into all of these triggers, but at the same time, design a situation to where I give myself grace in order to stay there. It's that in between.
I just realized, because we would go and we would leave them behind, and then here we are leaving them behind, and that would trigger me.
Oh, it triggered you when you left?
Because I'm like, what are we gonna? And as I know, okay, I can call them, I can text them, we'll find a place to meet up eventually, whatever. But we would just go and just assume that they would catch up. And I'm like, but we're leaving them behind. And so that would trigger me. That's what it was.
Yeah, but think about it. Everything is triggering right now.
Yeah.
But the goal is to allow yourself to see and be in that space and integrate into these large arcs of, I'm being triggered back into from now through the life arc of 0. Like, I think that's how big these arcs are, right? Now, all of these arcs, like, imagine it's like a huge arc, right? And then it has these opportunities for integration all through your life, right? Enjoy and Uncle George and Joel, whatever, right? That was an integration opportunity for that arc, right? But because you didn't integrate, it basically is a hoop. It was a hop. Right? So each arc has a point of integration, right? But when you don't integrate it, it just registers on and adds on to the unintegrated point of that specific trauma. And in your case, it might be twofold of being discarded and seeing how easy it is to be discarded, but because you're not needed. And not being needed is your initial inception of a belief propagation that causes your humanity to be human.
Right. I mean, to me, being needed is a safety mechanism to prevent being discarded, I think. Because if you need something, you can't discard it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a backup plan.
Yeah.
Like, well, I can't trust people not to discard me, but if they need me, then they can't discard me. It's I don't know what to call that, coping mechanism for it.
Yeah, well, it's a safety trigger. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a control. To be discarded is out of control because you're at the mercy of someone else. But you need something to soothe that. And so how do you soothe that? You go out of your way to be needed.
Yeah. Yeah.
But think about what that does to you as, right? If that's the baseline of you or of what Elliot is, he's someone who's needed, right? Like when you propagate from source into earth and you incarnate into this body, there are these baseline definitions or beliefs that you come to identify as you, right? And so everything flows out of that belief, right? And so think about how much actions of you come out of how do I become needed?
It's all, right. That's a lot right now.
No, but a lot. And then therefore be in that in-between space to recognize what that means, how that built you, how that is a representation of you, right? And the goal is not to reject that. And the goal is not to let that go. The goal is to acknowledge, no, that is okay, that is me.
Yeah.
So far, the only me I have known, so far, the only me that I know, so far, the only actions into earth that I have experienced have been me as someone who spends their lifetime trying to be needed.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And, this is at the other end of where I have spent my lifetime trying to be someone who's not needed.
Not needed or doesn't need anybody. Or both.
Make sure it's both. Doesn't need anybody and not needed. Right? So like my safety, where I seek safety or I feel safety, is the completely opposite of yours, where I don't want to be wanted. I don't want to be needed. I don't want to be with anything or anyone. Right? So like, right, when I reject this baseline, I'm not rejecting it out of this pain body, right? Because the baseline is there for me to explore what is it that I see myself with, right? And why am I not good at making friends? Well, guess what? Because I'm spending my lifetime trying not to make friends.
Yeah.
Because the second somebody gets too close, and I reject them. The second someone threatens, if I let them in, and the second someone does anything at all that is like, the what is it? The expression?
Sirens going off?
Oh yeah, sure. Right. Yeah. Well, 180 degrees the opposite direction. Right. But that is okay, because thus far I have designed that as a systematic way of functioning through my belief system, right? Because it's unsafe to be wanted. It's unsafe to be needed. And that is my safety mechanism. And I don't know, can you feel how it feels to integrate that as, yes, that is my truth. And I'm okay with that as my truth.
Yeah.
And I can be aware that is how I have functioned thus far in the world.
Right.
And then feel that where it feels in your body. I don't know if you can do that, but go into your body where, when I say you're not needed and you are easily discarded, where that sits. I don't know if you can feel that in your system, energetically, pranic system. And that's the point of shut off that you have, where you're not allowing the prana to flow, right? And the goal is not to not have that be there, but acknowledge that is the system out of which you function. You function out of that system. Do you see what I mean?
Right, I do.
It's really important to integrate. That is what integration is, to realize that that is the spot out of which you are functioning out of the system. And integration is accepting that as your system. Now, when you accept that, then you can cognitively, from any point, any frame from now on forward, go, here's a new frame. Do I want it to come out of this system?
Right.
Or do I want it to come out of a different system?
Right.
But realize that your general tendency is to have it come out of this system.
Yeah.
And that pause.
That's your default mechanism
is out of that system.
Kicking this forward one frame at a time.
Yeah, one frame at a time. But each opportunity is that frame.
Right. But but you can decide, yes, I'm going to do this. No, I'm not going to do this.
Through awareness of that system.
Without rejecting the part of you that has always been there. And, I'm pretending that that's not the case, or hating yourself over it, or whatever it is. Any of those things. Yes, that's important. Yeah,
but when you say that, I know you're saying that right now, I want you to feel that in your system. Like, feel that where that is in as you, like, quite literally, the dissemination of self as definition of Elliot and his experiences in this world, that is, a box that is one of the pillars that is you. Right. And the goal is to understand that functionality within you and then be able to accept it and then function on the road with that.
To me, it's this is where the constriction is in the throat.
In the throat?
Yeah.
Because?
I guess that's where a lot of the constriction seems to be. It just is, there's no doubt that that's where it is.
Because you
feels like
you didn't verbalize, didn't accept it to yourself. You didn't verbalize it to yourself?
To myself, or maybe to anybody, right? I never verbalize anything to anybody, let alone myself.
Yeah,
right.
That's why we're here still today. So here,
91. Yeah, that's like the story of my life. Didn't verbalize it because verbalizing it was scary or unsafe. Whatever, verbalizing whatever it happens to be, it doesn't matter. Anything.
Well, verbalizing, I guess, opening your throat chakra and verbalizing what you actually feel would be detrimental to you being good and thus being needed. Right? Does that relate or not?
Yes.
Because if you were to say, I don't feel needed out loud, I don't feel important. I don't feel needed. I don't feel wanted. What would that do?
That's because then saying that would be admitting some sort of, problem or issue or deficiency or something. And so then I'm not as good, like definitionally, right? And then that would make me, if anything, less wanted. It would almost feed some sort of spiral.
Yeah. Well,
to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
So we just pretend that doesn't happen.
Okay.
Right? Which, yeah, that's how that would go. So even if at some level I've known that this is the case for a long time, right? But it's one of those lie to yourself type things where you know it, but you just...
Well, everything's that.
Yeah, but this is really... This is one of those, like, I'm going to, like, pretend that the sky is not blue. I'm going to lie about the color of the sky, even though I see it, every day that it's not cloudy. It's like, it's one of those, like...
Yeah, it's a
really,
core belief.
Really...
Core beliefs.
I'm just going to pretend that this is all okay, even though I really know that it's not.
Yeah.
No, it
feels overwhelming.
I'm trying to make it this really emphatic that I know that I'm doing this, and yet I'm doing it anyway, and yet I'm pretending that I'm not, but I know that I'm pretending that I'm not because I know that it's the case.
This is the same thing we talked about in the last podcast with the Sauron energy. That is what the darkness is. Yeah. I'm not trying to brand this as darkness, but when you talk about darkness, that's what this is.
It is
an integration of truth, therefore lying to self.
Yeah.
Deceit of self.
But somehow I'm making a distinction here that this one, it was more obvious to me that I was lying to myself about this than almost anything else that I've lied to myself about in the past. This one, which I don't know, in some way makes it more bizarre because it's like, I can't even pretend that I didn't know.
The needing and discard it?
Yeah. Like there are other things I can pretend, oh, well, maybe I didn't know and maybe not. I can't even pretend on this one.
It's good though. Maybe, but I think, right, to allow that to first come out and be your truth and verbalize that. No, I find it, right, like, I guess, I went through so many of these dissension into the belief structures and like the baseline frequency that makes me. And there are so many, I guess, people call them core beliefs. I don't like that word, but like these like vibratory tones that I think they're actually vibratory tones that set in your experience into this world. And think about this particular frequency and how much of you is just fed out of this frequency.
No, it's a lot. It's a lot. And like, all the other things throughout the podcast that I've said, oh, that's a lot. It's all connected, right? It's all, on one hand, it's all just different facets of the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I want to be loved, but I loved, needed. There's a blurry line between those. Today, needed is the one that really resonates. On a different day, it'll be loved, but where that line is, I don't even know. Maybe that's the same thing.
Yeah, but it's all the little facets of these like subdivides that you have divided your psyche into,
right,
in order to block off different sections of self, to block off different flows of prana, right? This goes back to the base, right? Like the base is just like all of these little subsections that are just locked up. And the 4 pillars that we mentioned are just like little like windows into exploratory nature of what this base has under it, right?
Yeah.
And being wanted and being needed is quite literally like, why do you have a relationship with other humans? Oh, because they feel wanted and needed.
Right? It almost feels like that's where, right? It starts and ends almost.
For that pillar. Yeah, you're talking about that pillar in general.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Maybe both.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, that's the whole point.
Well, no.
Almost.
Yeah. But being wanted and needed is on that pillar, right? But deep down, you go, okay, like if you logic yourself into it, right? Like if you just explore that pillar, okay, so I'm discarded. So what happens to me? I die. Okay. Right. But like it goes deeper than that, right? Like the essence of your existence is that like, this is me going into exploring like the larger like subterranean version of this process, is that human psyche has that wired in at the core that is bigger than death. It's bigger than anything. This idea of someone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your identity rests on someone. Or your survival rests on someone, right?
Right.
And then through that, then you explore it out of like, okay, well, because someone, it doesn't matter if it's mom and dad or Bob, right? Like, right. And then what being wanted and needed, right, is therefore essential for this to check mark over here below Maslow's pyramid, check someone, right?
Yeah.
And in my case, it's the rejection of someone, right? Quite literally, like, oh, I don't want no one. Someone is threatening. But deep down, right, my psyche still struggles with the idea, like, wait, but I do want someone, right? Do I need someone? Like, right. I still cry and grieve the idea that I don't have someone, right? Not you, someone, but like, like, oh, like maternal, paternal, or friends,
yeah,
like,
right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it hits that someone. Because one, identity is tied to it, right? Like I'm doing something wrong if I don't have someone's. I'm bad because there's not a whole bunch of someone's around me, because there's that psychotic thing tied into there.
I mean, and then it's like, what number would soothe that? And there probably isn't one. One friend. Okay,
it's all just trauma.
1 million friends. You've got 1 million friends. It would never matter,
because it's all trauma based, and we have all of these social norms that come out of it. Go, well, no, it's perfectly normal to want and need friends.
Yeah, I mean, I think then this is why people who have any number of friends, people in Western society who live with people, see people every day, work with people, still feel lonely.
Yeah.
There's this loneliness that is like, that logically doesn't make sense because you are surrounded by people.
Yeah.
But maybe you're not surrounded by relationships that makes you feel, and that's what makes it feel lonely. But whatever it is not soothing that somebody.
I think it goes deeper. So yes, you're not soothed because whatever trauma you feel you're trying to shove this whole shot with is not shoving, right? No amount of doing, no amount of friends, no amount of family members, no amount of an awesome relationship or Stanley Cups will solve this hole, right? It's a bottomless pit, right?
I just got an email from, I think, Amazon saying that they've got, however many new colors have just come out or something. And I'm like, God.
I mean, the amount of consumerism with the Stanley Cups. It's a trope to me now, the number of colors with Stanley Cups.
Yeah, no, it's like.
And the what was the new one that Animal's in? Oh, the Olas or I don't know, whatever.
Sorry.
Right, it's a bottomless pit that you're trying to shove to address whatever loneliness or neediness or wantingness you have, right?
Yeah.
And so rudimentary, you just don't even understand that that's what that is, right?
We think that our loneliness comes from that bottom level not being soothed. Maybe it does. Maybe that's why everybody feels lonely.
Oh, okay, yeah. What do you mean by bottom level?
That bottom level of the pyramid, the somebody,
the subterranean somebody.
Yeah, the primordial somebody is not being soothed by. Okay, I've got somebody. I've got you. I've got a marriage. I've got kids.
Okay,
I've got whoever's at Kroger. I've got your neighbor. There are people. I can't possibly be lonely because there are people. Yet I feel lonely because there's some nebulous somebody. And people. Some popular people who have big families and they have all the friends and so always surrounded by people. They still feel lonely. And it doesn't make
deep down,
sense.
Because they're so distracted about the activity of the friends and the family, they never pause to go, how do I actually feel? Because, right, the book says the truth about that. Not having it or not having it, but the truthful relationships of all of that. And we trick ourselves into thinking that this is fulfilling.
Right. Well, I mean, and it's not the fact that, to me, maybe it is. Maybe it's because all these are trivialized relationships. And if there were a handful of
you're just distracted by being busy.
Yeah, but I'm saying above and beyond that, I don't know. Maybe if there are people who have some number of actual meaningful relationships, they don't feel lonely. I don't know. I think most people feel lonely.
No, this is what I was saying.
Probably wouldn't admit it.
Deep down, the someone, right?
Yeah.
is interpreted through trauma for us, right? And the loneliness comes out is not that someone will never meet our needs because it's a bottomless pit of you always trying to find someone in order not to feel lonely about not having the someone. But the someone there is trauma-based, like Maslow, redoing the Maslow pyramid with someone as a trauma-based, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying this is a solution to the trauma. The trauma needs to be actualized, felt through, integrated, and then seen how much of your functionality is coming out of this Maslow pyramid of someone not being there, right? But the truth is the satisfaction of our soul, and this is what I want to say, this is actually the solution to this. If you want to believe that there are any pillars to any pyramid or whatever, there's not such thing. There's just oneness of light. What you want to feel or what you're looking for and where the loneliness goes away is if you connect into the Christ consciousness and you open your heart into true love, not addressing of this pyramid of trauma love, but true essence of whole oneness. And you feel yourself akin with everything and everyone, right?
Right.
When you go into that space, the someone is you. And you is everything.
Right.
And you is the earth. And you is your love for arts and crafts. You is your love for flow of you in video production. Your love is your communications with animals and people, and your communication with self as love.
Yeah. No, I mean, yes, it is super clear that this desire, I feel lonely, so I'm going to shovel people and relationships and whatever into this. It is a bottomless pit that will never be filled. in the same way that, you can shovel heroin and cocaine and alcohol and prostitutes and gambling, whatever. You can shovel these into the various holes, and they're all bottomless pits, because that is not the thing that will fill that hole, if you will. That is super clear.
Yeah, but what fills that hole? Like,
what fills that hole is some sort of oneness and realizing that isn't a hole. But it can't be solved at this level.
At the whole level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's you need to ascend a level to realize that hole doesn't exist, which sounds like something that isn't useful advice is the problem. That sounds like, oh, just pretend it's not a problem. I'm not saying just pretend it's not there. That is absolutely not.
No.
It.
Have it be your truth. That the solution to filling that hole, which is not filling that hole, but actually integrating that hole into you as a whole.
Yeah, and step one is accepting that you feel like there's a hole there.
No, and then living through that truth, like not accepting it and therefore whatever, but living it as your truth. It is okay that I struggle in this life with having meaningful relationships with friends, because the natural nature of me is to be a yogic. Do you know what I mean?
Wow.
I think I said this before.
Yogic is hedgehog.
Right. I said this before, but when I was little, there was like a little book of poems that I memorized. And this is in Ukraine, and everybody memorizes this poem. I mean, as far as I know, but at least, if you have this children's book, but there was not that many children's book. And it was like, I'm translating it, but like it rhymes in Ukraine, in Russian. The poem goes like, why porcupine are you so prickly? Well, do you know who my neighbors are? They're wolves. Rabbits? Yeah, maybe rabbit. I don't know why it's rabbits. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm forgetting the rabbits. And then bears, right? So like the reason why you have to be so prickly is because you have to protect yourself from the outside environment, who are basically wolves and bears and maybe rabbits. I could be wrong about the rabbits portion, because I'm not sure why porcupine would be afraid of rabbits. But so that is the systematic mentality of my upbringing. Like, right, if I'm first learning to speak and the first thing I'm doing, and in Ukraine, you memorize poems like all the time. That is all you do. I don't know why.
I didn't memorize a single poem my entire
thing. I think why educationally, Ukrainian or Russian school system is so successful, and I have no idea what this does to your brain. I'm sure there's some studies, is from an early age, you're always reciting and memorizing things, like rudimentary things, poems, songs, routines, words, just rigorous memorization. And then when you get into school, you're memorizing poems, you're memorizing text.
Well, I think
you're a poem a day.
You're taught to memorize.
You're always taught to memorize.
We were never taught to memorize, other than multiplication. That's like the only, I guess we had to memorize vocabulary, but we memorized vocabulary for a week to be tested on Friday, and then we could forget it. Maybe there's a final at the end, but
Yeah, but the rigor of memorization sets in, like you start to speak, and guess what you're doing? You're memorizing like little childhood riddles and poems and songs.
We've seen that with a lot of things. That's the Russian Soviet way, is to drill.
Yeah.
And if you can practice it and do it over and over and over 100, 1,000 times, then you will, it becomes instinct.
Yeah. For martial arts, it works.
Whether that's martial arts, whether that's gymnastics,
but
whether
the idea of
poetry,
drilling or memorization is kind of like set in, right? So the reason I'm saying is, like, also just think about the tenacity of most Soviets. They're just tenacious people. Like the drive behind them is based out of this just cultural drive of memorization.
I understand why people think that Americans are just soft, because, we just lounge around, we don't have to study hard, and, we don't drill, and we don't memorize, and we don't participate. It's so There's so much contrast.
Yeah, but if you compare it to a Soviet system of drilling and memorization, do you know what I mean? But yeah, I grew up that way. But no, the poem, right, is like you have to be prickly in order to survive, right? And somehow that mentally, being an only child and feeling like I was abandoned as a child and no one really having time for me because they were busy surviving, that built in this general idea of what Tanya is. Tanya is really prickly. And a lot of people perceive me as prickly, right? Because that is just generalized core vibratory frequency that I have built in. Guess why? For safety.
Yeah.
Right? Like it feels very safe to be prickly. And then the second I don't become prickly and let someone else in, and even if there's like a hint of anything that is perceived unsafe, like the prickles extend 10 levels out, right? And you cannot penetrate that barrier. Like most people, like how many people talk to you, go, why did she exclude me out of her life? Right? Like it's that, right? Right.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I know.
Gosh.
Right. But he's verbal enough and emotionally aware enough to be able to verbalize that. But most people feel that, but would never, try to push through that barrier. Certain people try to push through that barrier, but then, the chances of you coming back after betrayal is like, the Yurgik situation is like, but right, for me to know that about myself and realize, okay, I vibrate, I communicate, I function out of this prickleness. Like I will be open to some extent and I will start to feel you out, right? But I think most people do that. Like, how much can I trust you? How much can I trust you? And then I will, decide the safety parameter that I have. Right. And then only allow you in based on that safety parameter. But the second you betray the safety parameter, you're out. Hence the discarding. Discarding.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah. So yeah, on the summary, like I guess of all of this is like I'm not rejecting these bases. I'm not rejecting them. I'm just saying that they're just windows into exploratory nature of your reality.
Yeah.
And they're not necessary there for you to have a stable base of this, a stable health of that. They're necessary there as you can use them as windows to start to actualize the true nature of you, right? Who am I through my relationship to me? Who am I through my relationship to others? Who am I through my relationship to higher spiritual being? Who am I through a relationship into what I do in this life?
Yeah.
And that's it. Like that is the only valid way you can perceive any kind of baseline or teaching of pillars.
Yeah. As opposed to the naive approach of, relationships, I need to make more friends to help fill up this bucket.
Yeah, but like if there's a teaching, even a religious or spiritual teaching that says, you have to be a savvy member of your community and you have to give back because that's what it means for you to be awakened or aware, right? It is very easy, right, to get discouraged, like on my end, and then go, fuck this. Because one, you're struggling with it, but then just push that away.
There's two default really easy things to do. One is to go, fuck this, and I'm never going to do that.
Yeah.
Because I can't, because I won't, because I don't believe in it. Or two is to go, well, I must accept it and I must do it.
Yeah, both of them are wrong.
Both of those are wrong.
Yeah.
Which sounds contradictory, but both of those are wrong.
Yeah.
It's wrong to do it for that reason.
Yeah. But both of those approaches.
Either choice may be right, but doing it because you're compelled to do it, you feel forced to do it, you feel guilted into doing it, or not doing it because you're like, well, I can't, or I won't, out of some stubbornness, or out,
Well, I reject it because I don't know how to do it. Yeah. That's my case. I reject it because I don't know how to do it. I don't know how. Like to me, not having a skill set is like, which sounds very cowardly, but I'm noticing that I have a lot of these coward-like behaviors. Is if I don't have a skill set of knowing how to stay open to people, but staying open to people is unsafe, my cowardness will go, I don't want people.
Right. That makes it easy.
Yeah.
It is the easy way out.
Yeah. But integration here is not me going out and trying to build fake relationship is realizing the coward nature that I have within me.
Right.
Of course, the word cowardness is a judgment here, but the cowardness I perceive unsafe because it's unsafe, and I have a hard time facing fear, and I have a hard time facing unsafety because I feel overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
My general nature is to close off and go into the yogic style, right? But just realizing that, going, look, I have this tendency of like, oh, this makes me feel unsafe.
Right. And then at that level, whether there are more friends or less friends or the same number of friends is irrelevant.
No, it is irrelevant, but I can start to see my exploratory nature of reality through that lens.
Mm-hmm.
Just like in your case, you can start to see, me making sandwiches for Aiden it is this extension of my identity.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? Just like I can see, okay, my inability to feel safe around people is why I don't have relationships. And in fact, I probably spend a lot of time ensuring that I don't have relationships because I want to run away from everything that makes me feel unsafe.
Yeah.
And allowing that space to be open and be vulnerable and open in that space, which is really, like, I want to emphasize that that's the difficult part, is to see that space and then stay open in that space.
Yeah, that is the difficult part, because we've trained our whole lives to react in a certain way, whether that's reject or dive in full force. That's so much easier to do. In fact, it's easier even to do the opposite of whatever your default state is. Yeah. The hardest thing to do is to be with it, be with how it feels.
Yeah, right.
And accept yourself, accept that part of you that you have never accepted, and you want to just pretend it isn't even there.
Yeah. It's the in-between space, right? Like, now I realize what my in-between being, right? Like, it's the in-between, the most uncomfortable space. It's not pushing through it, and it's not running away from it. It's actually being in the uncomfortable phase of overwhelm. Yeah. Of those emotional overwhelms. Not being lost to them, right? Like, I hear a lot of people, you know who I'm talking about, going, oh, well, think about what you're doing to yourself. You're purposely choosing to stay in that space. No, you're purposely choosing to accept that space.
Accept yourself in that space.
As that space, yeah.
That space in yourself.
Yeah. You're not trying to drown in it. Like, you can still give yourself grace, right? But like me moving through the crowd yesterday and giving an idea of some movement forward was soothing enough to where I could stay in that space, feel completely overwhelmed, but not short circuit. Do you see what I mean?
Right. There is this,
But that's grace while still staying in that space.
Yeah.
Which is extremely difficult. Like, I would say that is the challenge of self, is to experience self in the vulnerable space of complete overwhelm.
Right. And the interesting thing is that, that we all have those parts of us,
That's, you're human, therefore you're that. Unless you're Jesus, you're that.
And so, like, we all have them, and yet we all pretend that we don't. We all want to convince ourselves that we don't.
Because it's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming.
It's vulnerable and overwhelming, and it feels life-threatening. It feels bigger than life-threatening. Yeah.
And, like, I was going to say, and this just completely circles it into mind. We don't want to admit them, because if we admit them, then there's something wrong with us, and then people won't love us.
Yeah, because diabolically...
Right. So
you fed the system that actually causes you no. Diabolically, this is not you going back to you. It's the same story. It's just you have your story and I have my story. Diabolically, you have created the cycle of why you're not even going to allow yourself to go into that space.
Yes, that's what I mean. And like, I worded it that way. You would word it in a different way that would circle it back to you.
No, but no, what I'm saying is there's this other layer where you have designed a system where you're not even going to let yourself go there.
Right. It's some sort of negative feedback thing where I mean, obviously you feel it, but you pretend you don't feel it, because if you ever were to allow yourself to feel it, it would compound itself and explode.
Yeah. The short circuit.
Yeah. Short circuit.
You created neurological pathways to avoid short circuiting.
Some sort of feedback loop to protect itself. This entity This, maybe that's part of the ego. I'm not sure. Whatever this is.
Well, the ego is protecting yourself from short circuiting.
Yeah. So whatever this is, it has its own protection mechanisms to prevent it from even being acknowledged, let alone dealt with.
Yeah. Safety. But we're, like our mind, like think about how diabolically amazing we are.
Right.
That we can program ourselves away from feeling self.
Yeah. And then program ourselves away from realizing that we don't.
Yeah.
And
looping
program this blind spot, this entire blind spot in our psyche of we can't even it's just a blind spot.
Yeah.
The fact that this exists is just blind to so many people, myself included.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. But that's the in-between space that they have been hammering at me. And so the next transition into that, and I don't know if the next podcast will talk about this or not, but what I'm working on right now is being in that space and learning how to open your heart. And that's what the Hathor's teaching is recognizing this space. Like I'm taking Tom Canyon's written thing and I'm interpreting it on the higher level. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of rewriting it a bit in my mind. But I think it's because that's how they meant it, is recognizing this higher being that is you, that has designed the system to not feel, not see, and recognize that all of these aspects of self, right? I don't know, I guess maybe this is important for you to tell me if you feel this way, but I feel this way. They cause me to close my pranic energy of open heart flow.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right. So my yogic interpretation of reality closes my heart from the essence of love.
Me, right. It's like while me wanting to be needed and loved, you could look at that as some sort of open-hearted thing. It's not. It's really not.
It's not. Yeah.
My
heart is closed and I'm designing a system where this is perceived as love.
That's it. It's some sort of fake not love that almost looks like it fits in that hole, but it really doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And which is why it's never enough, which is why no amount of that will ever really soothe it. It might feel good for a minute here and there, but it will never,
no amount of sandwiches will cause this.
Right. It's just the key is just, it's close, but it's not right.
Because it's not love. It's just soothing of an endless pit that is trauma.
Right.
Right. But as long as you're spending your lifetime distracting yourself with this shoving shit into your trauma pit, all that shoving distracts you from the fact that your heart is just closed and closed and closed and closed.
I think that's the title, Shoving Shit into the Trauma Pit.
That's really long. I don't think I can fit into the graphic design. You won't fit in.
And then we'll look at it and then people won't listen to it.
Well, no, aesthetically, I control world through graphic design. So
I know.
No, right. But this is probably like the most important extension of it. I know probably nobody's listening to it by now since we're 2 hours in, but the most important extension of this is all of this is a distraction away from the fact that your heart is just continuing to remain closed and closed and closed and closed. And so in between space is feeling the overwhelm of this and seeing everything that you do in order to shove things away from acknowledgement, from awareness, and learning to open your heart as you force yourself to stay in that vulnerable space of integration.
Yeah.
Right. So
because you kind of do have to force it, especially at the beginning.
In my case, because I have this coward-like nature to want to run away from that overwhelm.
We all do.
Yeah, but in my case, I notice myself just, okay, this is hurting. This is causing my heart to feel pain and to feel unsafe, and I feel overwhelmed, and I don't feel like this is love. And so, guess what I do? I close myself off from love.
Yeah,
and that reinforces my cycle away from love, just general love. Not that this is actually love, right? But like it's perceived as not love, therefore I close love. Those are two separate loves.
Yeah. The things that we do in order to get what we really want, what we really maybe even need, have the opposite effect. Is the terrible, tragic irony in the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. But they're two separate concepts that we don't see as separate.
Right. They're all confused and muddled together.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. There's a lot. I mean, there's just a lot to unpack there.
Yeah. Right.
Right. Yeah. This is a transition into the next podcast, so you don't have to have it into this one. But there's this extension of when I perceive other people doing things that is unsafe to me and threatening to me, and I feel it as not love, I shut myself off, which shuts off my love, which is different from that love. Does that make sense?
I mean, as a defense mechanism.
Yeah, as a defense mechanism, but because that's not like hurting someone or acting a specific way that I perceived as hurting equates as not true love, the true essence of love, Christ love. And so someone behaving not out of Christ love, Christ consciousness, then thus has me feeling the trigger.
Right. And I mean, but for as long as I've known you, you've done that, even if you wouldn't have worded it that way.
Yeah, but I think...
Because at some level you felt that. Maybe you wouldn't be able to articulate it as true love versus false love, Christ love. Maybe not. I don't know. But go back 20-something years and you would do that, I think.
Yeah. So I think with me, this is another diabolical aspect that I probably don't let myself realize. I come in here with measuring everything against the Christ conscious love, right? And coming into humanity.
Not much measures up to that.
And measuring everything against that. I don't know if anybody does that. Maybe like I know I do that and I'm realizing I do that, but I don't know if anybody does that. Surely somebody does that. But I measure everything against that baseline and I said this before, with conscious memory of that as the baseline, and everything other than that is basically threatening, so threatening that I basically, yojic myself up from everything that is not Christ conscious love. But nothing on earth is.
Right.
Quite literally nothing on earth is. So what I struggle with at the most deepest level of not understanding is how to understand humanity who is not operating at any level of Christ conscious love. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
I that lady that we just listened to, and she's a past life regressionist. She said that there's different soul levels that come in. There's the earth level of soul, and then there's interplanetary level, and there's angelic consciousness. And the interplanetary and angelic just interpret reality on the different level.
Yeah. That relates.
Maybe that relates because I'm not saying that is definitely the case, but what I'm saying is they might offer some explanation, because if I remember distinctly a different way of love, I remember Christ conscious love, this uninterrupted flow that is the universal oneness. No, you can. This is just me and you talking.
Okay. Well, let's wrap it up and then we'll keep talking.
So, yeah.
Cut. So, yeah. I was going to say that, in Lord of the Rings, it's imagine the human communities, and there's this, infighting and whatever, and then there's the elf communities where it's just peace and love. I mean, short of, there's
very
an issue,
warrior-like.
There's an issue of Sauron or whatever, but there
it's just a different level of frequency of existence.
Yes.
Yeah. So
the dwarves are just at a different level.
Yes.
And the thing you could almost look at it as priorities, but it isn't even that.
It's a frequency base.
The elves
that is
are just
base.
living a different existence than the humans are.
Yeah.
The fact that they're immortal doesn't maybe I don't know. But then again, if your soul's immortal, what's the difference?
My soul is immortal. No, but that's what I'm saying. my yogicness, the close-heartedness that I have developed as a human comes out of net comparison on the baseline level, like subconsciously. This is what I'm doing spiritually. What I'm doing, I come in and I feel this Christ consciousness vibratory frequency as my like a normal baseline for everybody else, like outside of Earth interpretation. And because I feel that, I measure reality and potentiality of reality against that. But because nothing on earth ever offers that, not even as a baseline, but just even as an awareness, it is extremely threatening.
Yeah.
It is the utmost threatening.
Yeah.
So the reason why I bring in that lady is because like interplanetary, and I know I'm talking about still podcast wise referencing things, but it doesn't matter. But right, it is the most threatening because that is the baseline against which I measure everything. Like deep down, subconsciously, that is what I'm realizing, that is my baseline, and everything else is just threatening. And so like Earth is threatening. Like that's what it came down to. The reason why at age of 0, everything became threatening, like my karmic cycle of interpretation was utmost threatening. The reason why I incarnated into Ukraine, right? Because it was threatening, like at the base level of survival, right? Think about it. Ukraine is threatening at food and shelter, Maslow's pyramid level, right? But it's threatening at that base level of this is just not, it doesn't even have the base, which to me was that eternal consciousness of oneness and love.
Yeah.
Like beyond Maslow's pyramid, right? Like just like Earth doesn't offer that. We're not even aware of that. So I can't, right? To have an open heart towards something that is the baseline doesn't even have a heart. Like when I say it doesn't have a heart, like doesn't have that heart, it's like suicide. So the yogic thing is the utmost importance. So I think like step 1 coming into Earth was to close heart from anything that is Earth.
Yeah. Right. Which in the end just ends up doing more damage than anything else.
No, but that is my
right. I mean, yeah,
little journey of self.
Sure. I mean, I'm not saying it in a negative way. I've got mine, but it's right. You can look back on it and go, oh, look what I did and how, I don't know if misguided is the right word or not.
No, it was the only way for me to feel safe.
Sure.
Through the positive psychosis of here's
I know
the labyrinth I built to survive.
and I can relate.
Yeah.
But
just
with
on
my
a
own
different
thing,
level. Yeah.
But at the same time, I can look back now and go, misguided.
Well, no, misguided because that was what I needed to survive.
It served as it was. Yes, it was there as a safety protection mechanism, of course. But maybe misguided is the wrong way to word it. Maybe
it was the best what I can do based on the fact that I had zero conceptual actualization into how I actually felt. Now, at age of 40, I go, oh no, I mean, I have said this before, since 2017, now that line of pure consciousness is opened enough to where I'm like, oh no, I have felt this as my baseline reality. That knowing of that baseline love, of this larger than life love, that is the Christ consciousness, that is the oneness, the universe. I know I felt that. But my problem is I measured everything against it.
Yeah.
That was the disconnect. I didn't realize that I was measuring against something that was not the truth of this planet. Not the visual truth of this planet.
Right. It's like, it
was the trajectory of this planet, but it was not the truth of this planet.
If you're measuring everything against Michelangelo's paintings, and then, you can have other beautiful paintings that just will never measure up. That's not a great analogy.
Yeah. We can almost have this whole thing as its own little snippet of discussion.
Maybe. That's gonna kick off in a couple minutes if we don't wrap it up.
No, that's fine. So yeah. Open heart.
Open heart.
Learn how to open heart, or maybe learn what it is actually means to have an open heart, and everything that you're doing that is not a way forward towards an open heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
but very on the different level than I just said it.
Do what I mean, not what I say.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.